It has been 10 years since alleged PNB fraudster Mike Hale went on the run. He was finally caught late last year in England. I interviewed Steph Saville, our deputy editor, to refresh our memories about a man who allegedly destroyed many people's lives. This is an open letter addressed to Mike Hale that was posted on Facebook after his arrest.
We have never met. That is your good fortune. Because what you did to my mother upset her so deeply. Yes, you robbed an old lady of a pension investment, but you did more than that. You deceived her and broke the promises you made that she would benefit financially by trusting you. She thought so highly of you and your promises. Do you even remember her? The sweet, dear old lady who smiled with her beautiful eyes as she looked trustingly into your deceitful ones. Soon after the shock of being told of her financial loss, she began her awful journey of decline. My father lost his beloved wife. We lost our mother and our inheritance. You hurt and robbed our family of far more than just money. Do you even understand what you have done?
You were very pleased to hear of Mike Hale's arrest in the UK. Why the excitement?
I've reported on this story in The Witness for many years. I spoke to people who lost a lot of money when Mike Hale disappeared and got to know the backstories of those left behind. He was later charged with 45 counts of fraud, and the figure he was alleged to have made off with was pegged at 20 million rand, but many people believe it was much more than that. I think he owes us some answers, and maybe, just maybe, now we'll get some.
Can you tell us a bit of the background so people can remember how we got to this point?
Let's look at the history. On the 9th of July 2009, Mike Hale left South Africa saying he was going for a holiday in the UK. He had destroyed his client files and their money was gone. Speaking to Weekend Witness, Thomas said he had first been tipped off by a source in Portreath village that Hale had been living there. He knocked on doors asking people for sightings of Hale until he found Hale's previous landlord. He had arrived in 2009 with no credit card and only a suitcase, said Thomas. He said the landlord, who asked not to be identified, helped set Hale up with a British bank account and a CV so he could apply to a teaching agency. In 2010, Hale moved on to his new address in a rented, converted cowshed at Blackrock near Camborne. He added that it was difficult to hide in Cornwall as it was such a small area. He said that Hale told them he left South Africa under stress and said the less he said, the better. The Sun quoted Hale saying, "I'm not in the wrong. People over there were. I'm very upset. My lawyers are on it." In 2010, Hale's photograph and a warrant for his arrest were issued and forwarded to Interpol to establish his whereabouts. Macintosh Palela, then spokesperson for the Hawks, told The Witness in October 2011 that they'd applied for a warrant for Hale's arrest. He was then believed to be either in the UK, Spain, or Australia. In July 2013, The Witness reported that an extradition application had been made and that the process had begun to get Hale back to the country. In November 2013, The Witness revealed that UK journalists from The Sun had tracked Hale down after pupils at a school he was teaching at Googled his name and came across past Witness articles about the 45 counts of fraud he faces here. In December 2013, Hale said in an interview with the BBC that he was innocent of the allegations but would not return to South Africa. At the time, The Witness asked Paul Ramaloko of the Hawks why Hale had not yet been arrested on the allegations against him. Ramaloko said processes were in place for his extradition and that the police knew where he was. Hale told the BBC that those who are saying they've lost their life savings should talk to those who were left behind. "It wasn't me. I don't have their money," he told the BBC. "I never took it from them at all. That's all I'm prepared to say," he said. In July 2014, a woman who lost her life savings to Hale said she called the police for an update on the investigation and was told that they can't find him anymore. In July 2014, his wife Sharma Hale revealed that she was still waiting for police to interview her after all this time. The case, proceeding at what seemed like a snail's pace to the victims, received a further setback when the investigating officer resigned from the police.
People were reeling at the discovery that their life savings were gone and were now highly anxious about their futures. We asked the question, what kind of person does this? Steph Saville spoke to a psychologist. This is what he had to say.
He appears to demonstrate some typical traits of antisocial personality disorder, formerly known as psychopathy, but he appears to be far too calculating and methodical to be diagnosed as a regular psychopath. Individuals with antisocial personality traits often demonstrate a capacity for considerable charm, but their connections with and attachments to others are usually very shallow. Hale's ability to leave his wife of 16 years and to knowingly leave so many elderly investors destitute demonstrates the hallmark of antisocial personality disorder, namely a lack of remorse or conscience for his behavior. His apparent absence of any kind of compassion, guilt or restraint in his plunderings demonstrate that his emotional connections to others, including his wife, were probably paper thin. As a rule, however, psychopaths are impulsive and uncalculating, leading them to trip over themselves many times before they are brought to book. Hale's apparently clean record prior to his flight and his relative high profile as a sportsman suggests that he is an unusually calculating and self-controlled individual, perhaps more aptly described as a really clever crook than a prototypical impulsive psychopath.
You've never met Mike Hale. What picture do you have of him in your mind?
From what people told me, he's a smooth talker, a friend down at the pub, and a trusted financial advisor, or was. He had history in this town. He was a teacher here, he operated a business here, he was married. He lived and worked in the city for over 30 years, so he was a Pietermaritzburg person who was intelligent, well-known, well-liked, and trusted. But if he was all these things, and he also took the money he's alleged to have taken, then he's also a massive con man. And I think that's why people feel so emotional about this, besides the fact that they also lost their life savings. They felt betrayed by this man they thought was a friend of sorts, and I get that completely.
If you had the opportunity to sit down with Hale over a cup of coffee, what's the first thing you'd ask him?
I'd ask if he's as innocent as he says he is. Why didn't he explain himself? Everyone wanted to know. I myself left messages on his cell phone, on Facebook, and I wrote him emails. He had ample opportunity to get back to us. He must have known what we wrote about him. But he never did get back to us. He abandoned his wife, Sharma. He abandoned his clients and his friends. And he seemed to operate with no conscience.
What did Peter Steedman, who worked with Hale at MJC and Brokers at the time he disappeared, say about this all?
When I interviewed Steedman for The Witness, he said he felt police weren't doing enough. He said to me, he has destroyed people's lives. The old people have suffered the most. One couple's home and cars were repossessed. Others were also left with nothing. He's a wanted criminal. His picture should be on Sky News. Steedman said he believed Hale acted alone and that his carefully crafted disappearance had been planned for over 6 years.
The British papers also took an interest in him, didn't they?
Yes, his disappearance made news beyond Pietermaritzburg, with the Birmingham Mail, the Sun and the Times of London running stories about his flight. The BBC also aired a radio slot or two on him, and ex-SA DJ Martin Bailey interviewed me for his show over there.
Interesting. Tell us more.
Speaking to Weekend Witness at the time, the UK Sun reporter Alex West said when he approached Hale's home, Hale pressed his face to the window, nervously looking to see who was coming. West said Hale was, and I quote, fairly relieved I wasn't the police, but not so relieved when he realized I was a reporter. He knew what it was all about. Hale had been nervous and very sheepish, said West. West told me Hale wouldn't say too much and said he got the impression it all went wrong. He said it all got on top of him and that there were a lot of people involved. West described Hale as being timid and quite nervous and said he looked like a man on the run. He's afraid, said West. West gave credit to a freelance photographer, Mike Thomas, who tracked Hale to his home at Blackrock.
How did Hale feature on social media?
Well, he's the subject of 2 Facebook pages. One is a rather hilarious spoof account set up by students he had taught in the UK during his time as a part-time teacher there. It's silly but pretty funny too, but there's not much activity on it. The other is the Help Us Find Mike Hale group, set up by investors who lost money when he left town and by their children. This page is still active. People on that site are angry and hurt by what he's alleged to have done. They want Hale to face justice. They've worked together to try and get Hale back to South Africa to face the courts.
So the fallout continues to this day?
Absolutely. There's no quick fix for the damage that was done to people's lives. There are lots of stories like this. The money that went missing was largely from people who weren't rich. They were ordinary people who'd struggled to save over years, carefully investing their hard-earned money for their retirements. Many were unable to retire after that. The shock of all of this took its toll on many people, especially the elderly. But there was also a cesspit of people here blaming each other. There was huge mistrust and suspicion. People wanted someone to blame. Hale was gone, so who could they pin down? Understandably, they wanted justice. Who can blame them? I also want to see justice done. There's no closure for anyone without that.
Where did people think Mark Hale had gone after his disappearance?
There was a lot of conjecture as to where he could have fled to. Some people believed he might have gone to Zimbabwe because it is considered easy to bribe the border guards there. Hale hated the cold, so he wouldn't be in the UK, said one source who asked not to be named. He had previously lived in Kenya and had stayed in Zimbabwe for some time. One person said even his close mates don't know where he is. It's like he's fallen off the face of the earth. His wife Sharma believed someone must have helped him. She said he was a Luddite who didn't know how to use a computer, and she doesn't believe he could have pulled this off alone.
He was no stranger to misadventure, was he?
No, he once claimed to have swum across the English Channel with the loot from Britain's so-called Great Train Robbery. A tall story or a hint of things to come? Who knows?
How did this case affect the psyche of Maritzburg?
Hale's sales manager at MJCM Brokers, at the time Hale destroyed his clients' files, took the money and disappeared, Peter Steedman, told me in an interview in 2011 that the case caused massive harm in the insurance industry, and people's trust in their brokers went down the tubes after he left town. I remember saying to my broker, if you ever double-cross me, there will be big trouble. People did get suspicious. We saw how easy it was to do this, and many people were worried about their investments, especially in this economic climate.
So what's the latest?
Hale spent Christmas in jail under arrest, and an extradition hearing is set for January 20th. His alleged antics inspired a fierce search for his whereabouts by his alleged victims, who had enlisted the services of a UK-based private investigator, who apparently pinned down Hale's location and got his contact details. This information was forwarded to South African investigators, and Hale was later arrested. He was detained about 5 months ago. It's also believed that he intends to fight the extradition on the basis that South African prisons are inhumane and not fit for people, and he wants to face his trial in the UK.
This interview was conducted before Mike Hale was to appear at his extradition hearing on January 20. We will update our listeners as the story develops.
Newsflash update. According to sources who are close to the progress in the investigations, the British courts are unhappy with the conditions at Westville Prison. It's believed a British official is flying out to South Africa now to check out the conditions at Kokstad Supermax Prison, and depending on their findings, Mike Hale could be extradited to there. This is because he has British citizenship, and so they have to satisfy themselves he would be treated humanely here. It's also now unclear if Hale is in custody at present or if he has been ordered to wear a tag until the extradition process is finalised.